After 60 years of independence, Uganda's main tool in the agriculture sector is the hand hoe, used by 70% of the population involved in subsistence farming. Even after more than 30 years of peace and stability, Uganda is still bedeviled by poverty and underdevelopment. The situation is not any different on the continent because Africa, with over 1 billion people, accounts for only 3% of the global trade. Can Uganda and Africa in general marshal all what it takes to compete on a global scale? What are the dynamics that play in holding Africa back from enjoying its true contextual holistic development? My guest tonight is a young African intellectual, public policy analyst, researcher, and writer, Asha Birabwa. Asha Birabwa, thank you so much for having honored our invitation. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, and I'm honored to be here with you.
I just introduced you as a researcher, as a public policy analyst, as an intellectual, but quite broadly, who are you? What are you?
Basically, you would call me a human scientist. This is not something that most people know in Africa because our shortcoming is usually education. So there are certain things we talk about in the 21st century as far as education is concerned that most people are not familiar with.
Human scientist?
Human science is not a very common thing. So when you talk about it, everybody's like, what is human sciences? So human sciences, we look at a holistic approach to human life and human sustenance. We look at it in terms of microbioorganisms as an economic system. And we also look at it on the other side with creative intelligence and innovation as far as technology, markets, and creating goods. And we see markets basically on a
wait
global
a minute.
level.
Take me through your line of education, then I can understand you, then I can know how to place you.
Okay. My line of education is, I was trained more or less as an intellectual. I was educated by skipping classes, so I wasn't really formally educated. But the blessing in not being formally educated was that I had my own way of thinking. I had my own way of writing my own kind of formulas.
The gifted kids we hear, with a gifted mind, right?
I don't know if I would say gifted, because I can call it a privilege that I was able to be identified as a gifted child. So in this particular aspect, I'm referring to mentoring an unconventional way of thinking to solve conventional problems. It is what I took on when I skipped a few classes.
Tell me how you do that in Uganda. I would want to take my child. How do you do that in Uganda?
In Uganda.
And then you skip and then it looks like normal.
Actually, I come from a very intellectual family, which gives a lot of freedom for you to be whoever you want to be. My father, the late Honorable Kirunda Kivejinja, he was also
you are a daughter of a revolutionary.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
You know,
okay,
yes.
okay, go on.
Oh, yes.
Things are beginning to fall into play.
Oh,
okay.
So he kind of let us be, you know, in as far as mentoring you and identifying that you have your unique aspects. But with me in particular, I went to class and I just placed myself in primary 5, not in primary 1. And I never repeated any class. And when we got the report and it was taken home, my mother was like, what did you do? I was like number 30 out of 250 something. So she said, you can go, she will repeat in those classes up. But I never repeated any. So the most notorious thing I had on my report was, Asha, age is disturbing her in every class, because I did whatever I wanted. I was a little bit independent, like someone who had really not been oriented. Little did I know that this would become a gift. This lack of orientation made me find my own way of making my own formulas as a child that would fill in the gap and make me so unique and useful to the intellectual bank later when I went to study.
Wait a minute, intellectual bank meaning what?
Intellectual bank is where you take people with certain capabilities of understanding certain issues. You mentor them and use the way they look at views and aspects of life as an asset.
So where did they take you?
They took me to a lady called Datin Zaleha. One Paduka. She was in...
We're not speaking Ugandan here, right?
That is a name. It's not a language, it's a name.
Yes. That doesn't sound very Ugandan among the 50-something names I know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nomenclature. It's not a Ugandan nomenclature.
Yes, she's the Tinzaleha. And they took me there. I stayed with her for quite some time. And she was in Kuala Lumpur, but they were working by then. Kuala Lumpur is in Malaysia. They were working by then on getting different kinds of brains that they could introduce to education systems that would solve these new emerging Southeast Asian countries. So she identified me, talked to my father, and said she can go into this program. And that's how I entered, you know, into this special program, and I became intellectual property besides doing my human sciences. So
you are... Education and your background doesn't look like the normal way of going through education, is it?
I think if you even listen at it, it is not the conventional one, but sometimes you need to be unconventional in order to solve something within the conventional
So
system.
in a class, somewhere in Kuala Lumpur, with this lady, so I'm sure you're grouped together with other gifted minds of the world in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes.
What did you do there?
The truth of the whole matter, this is a very interesting story.
Yes.
What happened to me is we had an exam. So they came and picked me and said, come for this exam. But I wasn't supposed to be in that exam. So my father tells this Datin Paduka Zaliha that, you know what, let her go in. I know she will pass. But I hadn't been informed that I'm going to do an exam. But you know, a child of a revolutionary expects things to happen anytime. That is the mentoring they give you. So I go to the door. One Papua New Guinea girl did not come in. And this Papua New Guinea girl had gone maybe to, she had gone maybe to stressing herself out. And me, I didn't have hair on my head. I didn't really have much to fix on me. So I entered and they gave me her place to sit.
Okay.
I wasn't registered to be in this. So when they gave me a place to sit, I do 3,000 questions. And they tell us we're supposed to answer them in 30 minutes.
Wait a minute. 3,000 questions in 30
you
minutes.
answer them in 30 minutes. Now the me who was used to filling in my own kind of mathematics, I was fascinated by it. I got down and wrote down and said 30,000. I mean 3,000 questions, 30 minutes. I was like, I needed maybe quarter of a microsecond to actually finish this. So I didn't fill in anything. I signed my name and said, this is not an exam. Because if we were to do it, we would have enough time to do it.
You're challenging somebody or set up an exam.
I didn't know I was challenging anybody. So what really happened is, now there was an Israeli guy, there was another Russian guy. I raised my hand and say, I've finished. They asked me, did you read the instructions? I said, I read them. And then they said, what is on these instructions? And I said, answer all the questions. Why didn't you answer them? Because they don't make sense. Yes. And then said, how come they don't make sense?
You're such a rebellious daughter of Uganda, aren't you?
I'm glad.
How do you become so unruly in an exam that could have changed your life somewhere in Kuala Lumpur?
I was taught that your mind is the only asset that you have. That was my upbringing.
So you tell somebody who has set an exam, you raise your hand and say, this is a wrong exam.
This is a wrong exam.
And
if you write...
what do they say?
They looked at me and said, give us a logical reason as to why this is a wrong exam. And I said, because it is. So I started answering loudly. And I thought I was going back with my father. Little did I know he had left, and they had left me with this. Datin was a minister, you know, by then, Zaliha. And she's the one who came, and she was like, calm down, calm down. And then my dad had already left. For him, in his mind, I would pass. I don't know how.
Probably you're a problematic child. She was just good riddance. Be there in Kuala Lumpur.
I don't think
I can't understand the way you're doing things.
I don't think.
Handle her.
You know, there is a thin line between being problematic and being actually genius. I would like to think that I was in between.
Actually, it is madness and genius.
Madness?
They're related a bit. So here is Uganda's rebellious daughter in Kuala Lumpur, in the intellectual bank, standing on the borderline to madness, but she's also to have to be...
But she can give logical reasons to her madness. So she gave a logical reason as to why she wasn't doing this. And that was the point to give note to. So the Papua New Guinea girl I told you comes in when in 15 minutes I've finished and I've raised my hand. That's when they recognize we are two Africans. They couldn't distinguish between the two of us.
Okay.
So they carry me off and they take me up because I was explaining so many things I would have alerted everybody. So they take me off upstairs. There was upstairs where they are looking at us while we are answering these exams. There were different people within this exam. So when the Papua New Guinea comes, she begins circling one by one. In 15 minutes that I had, they told her to stop, and she had circled whatever she had managed to do so. And then the Jewish guy called me and asked me, "You said I'm stupid." I said, because I
Wait
didn't
a minute.
really.
You even told somebody who said the exam, probably a professor in a university,
Yes.
that he's stupid.
I told him I think it's not an intelligent exam. And then he said, "What word would you give me to say that it's not an intelligent exam?" I said, it's a stupid exam. That is what I said. But for the lack of a better word, I had come from the village.
language was still crude.
My language wasn't really polished. And my learning English wasn't so polished as it would, because for us, where we grew up from, you have to learn your local language. So English, I used to speak it at home and learn it, but I didn't know the difference between stupid and something else that I could have used at that time. So they called me upstairs and told me, "Asha, please come in." And then I explained why I was saying this, and then the guy looked at me and said, "Actually, I'm stupid. I didn't know you could figure me out." I thought he was joking. Then he called my father and said, "Congratulations, I think we will have this one over the Papua New Guinea."
So, but I think now, if you could pause there, you are lucky to have done, maybe challenged the conventional wisdom there. Probably you couldn't have challenged the same wisdom in Uganda. They let you be, to express yourself, even challenge the system.
I wasn't sure I was challenging the system by then. I was being myself, because as I was entering, my father just whispered to me and told me, "Be yourself." So I didn't know how not to be true to myself at that point. So I went on and became myself.
I've read one, I'm still reading one of your books, The Seasons of African Holistic Development. For everything under the sun, there is a season. But you come off like somebody. What scares you about Africa? What scares you about Uganda?
Ignorance. The degree to which we minimize.
You sound paranoid yourself in this book.
Paranoid?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. I think I will accept all your terms of madness, paranoid, and you know why?
What scares?
Because yesterday's madmen are the heroes of today that we celebrate. Because to be able to break any code, you need some degree of madness. So if I have it, I'll say thank you very much and take it as a compliment.
I actually read a book of Steve Jobs, and I think Steve Jobs was crazy.
But how much did he do?
He did a lot. I mean, I'm even carrying an iPhone here. But, so you, what scares you about ignorance? In what sense? Why do you think we're ignorant? Because look, as a humanity, we are moving, we are evolving, we are better people, have better tools, we have better technology, we are innovating, we are evolving. Why do you think we're still ignorant?
One of my favorite speeches, you know, history is the laboratory of human life and human experiences.
Yes.
So it helps us have experiments of what is reality, what has gone on and what hasn't gone on. The whole world has progressed. Africa, to some extent, we've moved up. But as you began this show, you said how much percentage of that is Africa contributing? Doesn't that
3% of the globe. Yeah, but that as may be, the human species is moving on. We are moving on.
And what are we supposed to be?
If you look about 10,000 years of the human progress, in the last 200 years, we have made such a huge, giant leap.
As humans,
as human beings,
the Africans being an exception from the introduction that you made in the beginning. Doesn't that concern you?
You know, when you look at people, our fathers, our grandfathers, I suppose our fathers were better than our grandfathers, and we're better than our fathers, and our children will be better than us. I can see the curve of human progress, even amidst all challenges, even here.
Let us define the context of what you call better.
You see, this phone has more computer power, 10,000 times more than what NASA had when they sent a man on the moon. Isn't that progress?
Let me tell you something. Ignorance, the kind of ignorance I'm talking about right now, is we are not even aware of what makes you as a structure of man. You as Mr. Patrick, what makes you as a structure of man? Are you aware?
I'm a human being, I'm a biological being, I am a spiritual being, I'm also an economic being. I am with you.
Okay.
With all my potential
Let us break down.
of my biological, spiritual, and economic.
Okay,
That's what makes
let us
me.
break down, and then I'll define what made a human being of before and a human being of now. Having said that, I'm not saying we are going to have to move backwards, but we are going to see the context in which what we think moving forward has led us to move backwards instead. Let me break down the structure of man for you. The structure of man is that slow down light is your condensed body. A piece of wood, furniture, or living kind of what you can call anything solid is slowed down light. Okay? So if it is slowed down light, it means, even as I'm talking to you, Mr. Patrick, we are vibrating. And if they were to put a cap on my head, an electric cap, I would have a frequency, if I'm happy, that would go on from me to you. We cannot see it physically in our 3D dimension, but we can see it by gamma light, which is on a computer. I'm coming, Mr. Patrick. So basing on this kind of thing, they realized the African of then had drawn, have you seen our bitengis? You see the tie and dye? Those are actually light codes.
What?
Those are light codes.
So there's a message in there.
They are called Adinkra codes. Adinkra codes, when they, you know these bitengis that you see, the boxes and the squares in African print. Do you know what it meant? What we were is what we expressed. So our grandparents could draw.
Your garment has a code of a cobra. Yeah,
you know,
it's just a print of a snake.
It's a frequency. No, let me come. Let me finish my point, Patrick. So now,
Adinkra codes.
Adinkra codes. Do you know what the Adinkra codes are? There is a Professor James Carson, who was the advisor of Obama on technology. Being African, he saw these African prints and patterns. Studying physics, he decided and said, you know what? Let me see what this is. And you know what he discovered? That this is the energy wave that we are using to connect me and you, which is your phone. You talked about your phone, and these are the current times. But the code we are using was there before by our grandparents who were there in the times when there was no news to read and write. So now tell me about development. Because we have lost this, let me say something. Because we've lost this, how do we lose it? Plants are 50% DNA to your DNA.
That I know. That I know.
You know, okay? And because you are 50%, if you're going to cut out all your trees, you're not coordinating and communicating and activating your DNA basing on the environment in which you are.
How were the African people of the past harnessing the Adinkra codes?
Let me tell you, Mr. Patrick, as a result of that, you are not able to connect and activate your DNA. So do you know why? We are now more connected with more wired but less connected. Because before I could feel Patrick when Patrick is not around. I could, because of that high vibration. So using the Adinkra codes now we have made the phone, that is technology. So who's going ahead and who's going backward now? Isn't there ignorance? Doesn't it worry you?
You sound like a professor who's on the borderline to actually lose it.
I prefer to lose it. I prefer to lose it.
Yes, no.
But this is the part where it is realistic.
But you know...
No, this is the part where this is realistic. Let me tell you why. In my approach to human sciences, which is my bias of education, we look at two systems. Like I told you in the beginning, microbioorganisms, they even carry particles called, like we would call nuggets, which are particles of gold. And they clamp them together over millions and millions of years. So everything you're thinking about as basis of the current economic system is decomposed matter and microbioactivity, fungus, bacteria. Why I'm not a crazy professor, this is what I'm trying to say. We are promoting a project in Sese.
By the way, you are farming maggots. Black
soldier fly larvae.
Maggots, actually.
And these are microbioorganisms.
So you,
which
Asha Birabwa Kivejinja, you cocooned yourself on an island in Lake Victoria to farm maggots, and you think that's a game changer? Black soldier flies.
I don't think, I know for sure that it is a game changer. Ask me why it is a game changer. Everything we talk about today, microbial-organisms have been the basis of our economic system. They are the ones that group gold, and you find it in the way that you find it. In nuggets, they put them together for years and years. Decomposed matter, petroleum.
I'm going to come to your job and your passion of farming, you know. Jolo. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. No.
So
if you
I
knew,
put it in Uganda.
Bacteria are in our body, Mr. Patrick. Bacteria in our body. Everything, every problem you have and every disease from Alzheimer's to stomach ulcers is connected to your gut bacteria. Everything. So you cannot look at maggots and say,
I don't want to go there because I want to be systematic. So the Adinkra codes that the Africans had, so you actually wanted them to stick there, but using the knowledge, indigenous knowledge, whether it's African or whether it's European, humanity has moved on. They couldn't have stayed because look, with their knowledge, what did they do for themselves?
This is what I'm trying to say. It depends on what you define as what they did for themselves, and you what you think you did for yourself that you haven't done for yourself in the current modern technology. These are two different things.
Because I know life was more or less the same for tens of thousands of years until maybe 100 years or 150 years ago, when man is about even to become an interplanetary species. Because of technology and because of science and how they're applying them.
Let us look
In fact, I want you to read, I don't know whether there's a Hebrew professor called Professor Yuval Hariri. You need to read his book, Homo Deus.
Homo Deus.
Yes, and see how we have moved in the 150 years, more than tens of millions of years when we were just static. And what has made that move is because of technology and how we have applied it.
Let me define technology.
And so the species, or even our Africans, are what? Are advancing.
Okay.
When we are still in Africa as Homo sapiens before the same people moved into Europe and maybe met the Neanderthals and became the Caucasians who they are, life was more or less the same until 150 years. What has changed is technology. And it's going to change, again, it's going to be technology.
There are three things. When I first talked about the first type that we look at in human sciences as the economic system of decomposed matter, where everything in the ground has been as a result, which is making the market economy today, is decomposed matter. Even petroleum is, you know. So now when we are looking at technology, we are looking at what the mind of man has been able to do. So we are looking at intelligence in three capacities. What you learn in school as knowledge. And then the second one is creative intelligence. This is where technology comes in. And then the third one is consciousness. Consciousness is about how much are you using the creative intelligence to make sure that even your natural environment is actually aiding you without harming the other. So for as long as we are not having the balance within these two, we are having a problem.
We have been able to know we are harming the environment using technology at the same time.
But can I tell you what is even decreasing even more? Your nature is connected to DNA and all this that is happening all around you. The more you remove it and you use the Adinkra codes to make something artificial, what is happening to your DNA? DNA is about transmission of light from one entity to another. And your entire DNA sustains your entire life. Even as we are on these lights, Mr. Patrick, my life is getting less because I'm looking at these tubes as you see them. And if I stay in it and expose myself too much with it, it is disrupting my DNA. So the more I am in a natural environment, the more beneficial it is for me.
Is this the reason why you have cocooned yourself on an island?
I haven't cocooned myself because there are people there.
To start farming maggots.
Now, farming maggots,
and you're proud about that?
Oh yeah, we all have microbial-organisms in our body, and I'm proud of that. But cocooning myself is not the case. What is the case is that they are people, and this is a game changer because we are having household incomes for once. Poverty alleviation, household per household. And if we were to go into it, every household at least is able to have 50,000 a month. Do you know what it means in our Uganda today? Microbial organisms by 2050, World Food and FAO, told us that, you know what, this is a kind of intellectualism which is directive due to their research. They've told us by 2050 we are not going to have enough protein. Today you look around and ask people, you see chicken, you know, and you're saying, but we have some chicken. Let people tell you how many have gotten out of rearing chicken because the feeds are high, and then you can understand why they are warning you about 2015 not having protein.
Protein, you live in Lake Victoria with a lot of mukene and people...
It is not there. You're imagining there is a lot of mukene. It is not there.
So what is this so essential about?
Protein. The protein makes your cells regenerate, Mr. Patrick, in your body.
So going to lack regeneration.
So once your cells are not regenerating, you know what's going to happen to your body? Cancer cells are going to begin grouping up and eating different parts of your body. And when they begin doing that, then you're going to have cancer. Meaning if you gave birth today, your child by 2050 would be about 27 or 28 years old. They would already be having cancer, which we do not have a solution for in our conventional way. And why isn't protein not important? So let people rear maggots. And let these maggots...
So what are you doing with the maggots?
Let people rear maggots. And these maggots are an alternative protein source. They give you organic pesticide, which is good for the plants, and you don't use artificial pesticides, which can really hamper and tamper with the content of the DNA of your plants.
You know, Ugandans are watching and listening to you, and they're wondering, what are you using? Like, where do you put your maggots?
Where do we put our maggots?
Yeah, so that they can become protein to the people. And
No.
what's because you're scaring them now.
I'm not scaring them. I'm saying the truth. This is what scares me about Africa. We look at things on the surface and we don't apply our mind.
You feed the things to animals.
To fish.
Okay.
And you see, Mukene has decreased in the lake. The population of the people who have come using silverfish, you know, has really gone. Uganda, I think by the time this government came in power, we were about 12 million. Today we are 48. Do you know what it means to have a population you haven't planned for in as far as food increase is concerned? So there is more land encroachment, but not enough space for certain kinds of food. So do you know what that means? That even we've encroached on waters, and we've depleted the waters of even the species which are supposed to give us, in this case fish, which are supposed to give us the right protein. And we do not even plan production to say that since we have this population, this number of protein will be enough in helping us with the population to have protein.
So wait a minute, I've seen some sort of fish feed that looks like pellets.
Oh, yeah.
So are those maggots? Dried maggots?
In our case, the pellets that we make,
yeah.
Yes, those are dried maggots. But I want you to look at them as microbioorganisms. In your clean body, as suited up as you are, you have got gut bacteria. These are part of our body, by the way. Anything, any disease from Alzheimer's to allergies is linked to gut bacteria. Even diabetes.
They've just gotten a medicine that is a game changer in Alzheimer's.
You know, and it must have probiotics, if I'm not mistaken. Probiotics are actually bacteria that you take to help balance your immune system and to help you with certain diseases. So this is not a time for you to say maggots and maggots. Maggots are you, whether you like it or not. So let us find a way of harnessing them, because it is our life support system. And let us find a way we can use them and harness them, and we balance out the effects of technology.
So the people in Kalangala, where you live, are they embracing this model of farming maggots and then to feed them to I suppose the chicken, pigs, and maybe
and even fish? What we have actually is we have got about 100 groups of fisher folk who we are planning to phase out step by step into farming, cage fish farming. But what had initially stopped them was a lack of protein. There is no mukene. So this comes as a substitute. Also the fact that it has a pesticide will have more fresher and pathogen-free. Pathogen, these are microbioorganisms that are not really so friendly, that are within the foods if they are not cooked very well. So as we give this, we will actually help this problem. We'll have the best fish, best protein, and then we can help to see that we get quality. It's not an issue of just protein, but quality protein that we are taking into our bodies. Of course, there is a challenge with China. They make a flavor. This flavor smells to the fish like it is mukene, which is silverfish, but it's just a smell. It is nothing. So now it is an issue of, are we going to eat nothing and feed ourselves nothing, or are we going to get the real thing and feed ourselves something? And who will stand in that gap and make that integrity to our foods and say our lives matter to this extent?
Asha Birabwa, hold on to your point, because we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to know, Asha, where is Uganda now, and how can we move forward? What kind of obstacles are we finding, and how can we turn our obstacles into stepping stones? We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Asha Birabwa Kive-Jinja. She's a writer and a public policy analyst and an intellectual. You know, somewhere in this book, somebody has written that unless Africa embraces the specialized contextual intellectualism, it is far from ever overcoming its sort of state of development. How do we overcome our sort of state of development?
I think, first of all, let us look at the conditions that we haven't looked at before. And some of these I try to explain to them, explain about them in my book, Seasons of African Holistic Development. And I divide the seasons into three. First, in African way, there is what we call the hope and dream of redemption. Then there is living the dream, the choice of alternative paths at season 2. And then there is great expectations, which is season 3. In season 1, in my kind of research, you see a state where people are overwhelmed by the pressing human condition, which is poverty. Which is like now? It was in 1962 during the times
but you know what? Yeah, sometimes you are a child of the revolutionary.
Uh-huh.
Let him rest in peace.
Yes.
Right, Honorable Kive-Jinja.
Yes.
Him and his colleagues picked guns and went to the bush and to fight another government. They've been here for almost 40 years. We are still a hippie country, highly indebted and poor country. Shame on those leaders. Shame on them.
Shame on them.
Yeah.
And shame on you, Mr. Patrick. You know what?
For having not changed them, right?
For having not pioneered your own development where you are, and being so crippled that you put your entire life, even what you can do, into the hands of another person.
So you do not believe that a leader is responsible for trying to inspire his people and lead them out of poverty? You don't believe that?
What I'm trying to get out of is this. What I know for sure is that I am not responsible for bad weather and bad actions of other people. They are not my making. But as an intellectual, I am also trying to do what I can this time.
I don't want to invoke again the name of your father, but because he was in a system that is in charge of our affairs. About 8 years ago, one of their manifesto is, we're going to bring you 18 million handholds, and that was a great achievement.
Now let me say this.
Can you imagine?
Let us understand the conditions within the season.
And you're talking about Africa's holistic development. And
yes.
You're not a politician, but you're a child of the revolutionary. Their greatest idea 10 years ago is, we're bringing you 18 million handholds.
As a child of a revolutionary, the greatest privilege I have is that of a quality education. And the greatest obligation I have is to share the different knowledge that I have had and to demonstrate it in practical terms, how we can use it to advance ourselves, which I have done. So as far as you having a case on me, you don't have one, Mr. Patrick.
No,
now,
I just want to shed a light on the fact that leadership is key in transforming people. When you talk about Kuala Lumpur, where you were, in Malaysia, Lee Kuan Yew and Ibrahim Anwar Ibrahim, Mahatma Muhammad and Lee Kuan Yew changed their nations in 30 years because there was the right leadership.
No. It was because of intellectualism. They had intellectual banks. People who thought for the country. But when we are in a country where education is coming to a point where it does not matter. You know, Patrick, I have met people. Education doesn't matter.
That education, it still goes back to the leader, to the leadership. There are people who are taking our taxes. People who are who are appropriating money. to different sectors. People who are making laws are leaders. And at the top, there is a leader. I don't know why. I know you don't want to talk about your political uncles, but if they have goofed, they have goofed. You should just admit that somehow they have gotten off the rail.
What I'm trying to do is I'm not even trying to explain away anybody. I'm explaining my role as a child of a revolutionary. And I'm trying to say the bad weather and the bad acts of someone, if they were really bad, they are not my mate.
Actually, you, the children of the revolutionary, you are let down. Because probably your parents and those who are still around have been able to do a little bit of some great exploits, but you, the children of the revolutionary, these days, actually, even when they go to share ideas and whatever, I see them on social media, it's crazy.
But I have...
What happened to them? What happened to the children of the revolution?
Talk about me. Talk about me. We have a channel.
I've seen them in the army. I've seen them.
You've seen them everywhere.
Yeah, but I'm like, really? Because they say an apple should not fall far away from the what?
From the tree.
From the tree. But some apples have just disappeared off the tree.
No, children of revolutionaries have also had a problem of adjusting within the community. Like I can tell you, I had an experience when I was in London. And I went to London, just as me, as I'm talking to you here. And I went to the University of East London. I had a talk on development. They also called different people opposition of Uganda at this university, and I had gone to promote my book, Seasons of African Holistic Development, understanding the plight of children of revolutionaries. Do you know what happened to me? The minute they introduced me, in fact, the person said, Chirunda Chivejinja is going to speak. Instead of even calling me Asha Birabwa, at least put the third name. And I can tell you, bottles flared up in the air. Don't speak, don't speak. They were talking like Mr. Patrick is talking today. Your fathers have done this and your fathers have done this. You know, now I said, what exactly do I... I said, now
the
what...
voice of God. Vox Populi is Vox Today.
So I was like, what am I going to do? So I looked at everybody who was annoyed.
The voice of the people.
And who was angry. And I told myself, but must I apologize because my father is my father? I came here as a professional to give my talk. So I began explaining everything that I had to give. And I said, for my father, he's alive. By then he was. You can ask him what he is. But as for me, I am not responsible for the bad weather and the bad actions of others.
I'm going to agree on that one because all of us here, we never chose our parents.
So you can't begin apologizing for them.
Even the children of the revolution, we never, when the leaders go berserk, maybe we cannot blame you so much.
It shouldn't be that.
None of us, we never chose. You didn't choose your parents, I didn't choose mine, and somebody else didn't choose theirs.
But coming back to this point, Mr. Patrick, I explained the seasons in terms of three. So the first season, the hope and dream of redemption, when people got independence, they inherited some social monsters, disease, poverty, ignorance, and you were talking about 90% or above that we are not really educated. Then you're talking about a country that went into war. I'm not justifying anything, I'm explaining season one. So each time these people come in, there's people who have already had an overdose of what it means to be impoverished, to be poor, to be everything. So they are looking for leaders to come and help them, take them to the hope and dream of redemption. That is season one. Then season two, they go to living the dream and the choice of alternative paths. And this is where the problem has happened. And this is why I want to explain away your point of why is it that they've done the same thing over and over again. And leaders, don't blame these leaders also. You blame the leaders also who came before if you're to blame. And even those who will come after, because they'll make the same mistakes if they don't apply their minds to understanding certain issues. Now, when they come in season two, we have all kinds of groups. Traditional leaders. These are kings. These are religious leaders. These are musicians. These are sports. These are children. These are youths. Special groups. Members of parliament. Cabinet members. All these are groups and factions within society. But our system has the judiciary, the members of parliament. It also has presidency as the main structures that actually do this. But where are all these other groups encroached within the system? Nowhere. And this is our colonial system. So we are conditioned in that particular way to always leave human issues that concern people outside the system. So these keep poking the leadership, they keep poking the leaders until they cause really a destabilization of the status quo. Then you find every president is concentrating on consolidating themselves because there is something poking from each and every side. So their aim is, first of all, let us keep it stable.
Regime survival.
Regime survival becomes the predominancy of actually, it takes over the holistic development angles. The human issues are left behind. So now, in season 2, we don't go to great expectations where they handle the intangible and tangible elements of national power.
Why don't you tell your political uncles this regime survival thing is killing Uganda?
First and foremost, first and foremost,
Have
even
you
you,
forgotten?
Patrick,
You don't know that
need to understand.
You don't know that now you're actually you're actually giving them heavy blows.
I'm just saying the truth. And I'm also a creation of this government, by the way, because I've been educated by my so-called political uncles, as you called them, and my revolutionary fathers. So I don't think they have a problem with it, you know, and understanding it. If even you, Patrick, can understand it, then the whole of Uganda can understand it. We are on this forum to try and educate and create awareness and consciousness. So what happens is that when these destabilizing factors remain behind, this is where you'll get a musician, because they are not part of the central system. They become a leader, and now they will be the one to bring the issues that they feel were outside concerning the people. So you always have something poking at the system, and this destabilization gives us a blow that the ever-emerging emergencies...
What you call poking, which is maybe criticism or whatever it is, I think that is necessary, and at the end of the day, it breeds quality.
Which one?
Because if somebody is criticizing you here, somebody is telling you, hey, you're going off rail.
If they cause so much pressure,
if you're a leader, that should just make you be...
If they cause so much pressure that politics takes precedence over holistic development, then we are doing ourselves a disfavor. And the conditioning we got handed that the system we have is sufficient is a lie.
So if we have people in position of leadership, we have given them the mandate to lead, and we see them diverting, not doing what we expect them to do, shouldn't we poke them?
This is a conditioning.
Shouldn't we poke them?
What should happen is, what is missing? Why are they being poked? Because something is on the outside. And what can we do to make that? Let us form a system. I'm just suggesting, if it was me, let us form a system which is circular, that includes all these people within the system where they can discuss it. Because now it means that if you want something discussed, you have to talk about a regime change. Is it necessary? The people you're telling me who changed their countries, they were people who were in power for 35 years. You can't imagine.
Yeah. The same.
35 years. And they even came back when they were 70, over 80, like Mahathir just came back. You know, so the issue was not how long a person stayed in power, but what agendas of development did they have. So this is the real key, you know, that we need to have. But we need to realize this works,
so
this doesn't work.
So ours lack a proper agenda of development, even though they have been here longer.
What lacks is intellectualism, being involved within the system, intellectual banks, people that think for this country.
Yeah, but if you are having a government, a cabinet of fishermen and fisherwomen, so are you not asking for too much?
I think I'm going to do...
That's how they characterize them. The president said that he has picked a cabinet of fishermen and fisherwomen.
I think that but you should ask him.
Yeah, well, and for you, you said you want intellectual people, intellectuals.
I'm saying we could use intellectuals. We could look at intellectualism in a way we haven't looked at before, and it could serve us in as far as holistic development is concerned. And the monsters which you were reading that have been putting us behind for so long. And when we talk of intellectualism, what exactly am I meaning?
Oh, yeah.
I'm meaning we find modes and ways where we do research that is directive, that is creatively innovative, that helps us set up microeconomies at the community level, where you have 1 shilling, 2 shilling accumulating until we form aggregates that meet in the middle. So as the system that comes from above comes somewhere, the system that comes from the bottom from a microeconomy comes up to some point, and then we converge. We do not have micro a microeconomy system management. That is key. And we are not going to say that leaders are leaders, but they don't have to be intellectual.
And what is the stumbling block that is stopping us from having that kind of system?
Using the right creative intellectualism. We need intellectual banks. We need people who think for the country. Patrick, you're a journalist. You're not an intellectual. So this is why what I'm talking about is sounding funny to you. You're even calling me a mad person, you know. So you need to do your job, and everybody needs to position themselves in the area where they should be. And we look at human life, human sustenance, even on this planet, in ways that are holistic.
But when you look at, you're a policy analyst, when you look at Ugandan policies, really, if they were executed well, would be somewhere. In fact, when you're talking about development at the lowest level, it more or less looks like what has been proposed as a parish development model.
Let me tell you something. Why?
That every village and every parish should be able to produce something at a micro level, and then they can feed into a national level. Maybe have some cottage industries everywhere, because countries you're talking about have actually developed because they have cottage industries.
Cottage industries, yes. Small-scale industries in places. On that, I agree with you. But what I was trying to tell you also, Patrick, that we really, really need to realize is we cannot despise intellectualism anymore, because in this 21st century, we are paying a high price for not putting it where it belongs. You can be a leader.
You have looked at our policies, I'm sure, as an analyst.
But
I know some people in the region, when a Ugandan public servant goes to make a presentation in Nairobi, Kigali, or Dar es Salaam, people are waiting to pick that document, because they know when Ugandans write something, it's always, you know, robust. Our problem is that we are not able to implement the very policies that we have.
This is where intellectual banks come in. They should design new systems which have feasibility studies, pilot studies, and they should be able to give you the roadmap, do this, do this. But let me tell you another thing which is lacking, which I was talking about in season 3, which is the intangible elements of national power.
Intangible
elements of national power. One of them is intellectualism, the quality of mind you use in promoting your agenda. It's not about the quality of knowledge you've learned in your books and how many degrees and PhDs you have. It is the quality you use in executing holistic development. And then it also means how much of that do you have? The quality of research is another intangible element of national power. How much research do you have? You can have the best idea, but when it's not researched, and it goes on the ground and fails terribly, but it has all the good papers to support it, that it is a good thing, but it's not practical, it's not applicable on the ground. And then in this research, we also analyze a very key issue, which is the social, psychological conditions of the people in villages. The social, psychological conditioning is such that people are traumatized with poverty. Poverty is trauma also. They are not looking for meaning. They are looking for simply to be alive.
Asha, there's a lot of bitterness in this country because people are poor. There is even hate nowadays because people are standing on a mountain of injustice in some cases. And unless we're able to deal with the bitterness amongst the people, the hatred that can be seen on social media.
This is where the hatred comes in. Patrick, it is easier for you to smile when you have food on your plate than when you do not have food on your plate. So the issue of poverty has always been the question of instability within all our systems. And if we do not handle poverty, we are going to have a problem. And this poverty on its own traumatizes and conditions people socially. Because all people want in that desperate condition is, what can I do as a person that I wake up to in the morning? After they wake up every day, then meaning can come later, because then they have something they are doing every day, however small. This is why maggots are so important. So however small, then they do that. Tomorrow they think of expanding that. Then the third time they think of, I can take my children to school. The next time they think of, what can I do to keep my job? What can I do to expand? Now you're having values that are raising and people you can talk to. Right now you have people you can't talk to because of the trauma of poverty. And I'm not saying it is not there. I'm here just to discuss with you part of the solution to this problem and my contribution in that area.
But you seem not to actually link that poverty and that trauma to leadership or lack of proper leadership?
I want to look at a world where
there is no linkage there?
This is what I'm trying to say. We have a conditioning in our systems. We are going to blame this government. We are going to blame the government before, as I explained season 2. We shall blame even the government that will come if it does not look at the issues on the outside. You have taken your part by being a journalist, bringing me here, and we are talking about this. It may be the first time we are talking about this in this particular dimension. That's a good step. You've done your job, I've done mine. Then the person listening will know. We've begun something we call an economic village movement in Sese Islands.
Economic village movement.
Economic village movement, where people grow maggots household per household. And I told you a month, every household can have 50. And our group, we're plus all the Synergy corporate members, Kalangala, Oil Palm, COPGT, Growers Trust is also part of us. We have 30,000 targeted people. So we are doing a change, and we hope that other people can also come. But
there's somebody at the apex, or whoever is running the economy, who thought the growing of palm oil is a good thing for Kalangala, but it turned out it may not be good.
Not everybody was put in there. Now, this is the dynamics of growing palm oil in Kalangala. The people who are poor, Kalangala is about 70,000 population. The people who are there in the oil palm are about 2,063. Now, majority of those are rich people who live in Kampala. They have farm managers who are there. So the majority of people are still poor. And those that have this money, it is brought within Kampala. It's not even brought within Kalangala. So you have to find what these other people who are not part of that 2,600 and whatever can do. Plus the prices are decreasing every day. Last year, the price of one fruit bunch, 1 kilogram, was 2,000. Today it is 800 shillings. And the maggots which you're talking about are 2,000 a kilo. Okay? So everybody who was doing palm oil growing is now looking to subsidizing, to substituting their activity with the maggots.
With the black fly.
With the black soldier fly.
Black soldier fly.
Larvae. So we are doing our best. And we hope. It's a black unsoweda.
Yeah, that's what you are farming.
Yes, that's what we are farming. And we are energizing the fishing sector, the livestock sector, and also really just those two mainly for protein.
Tell me, how easy was it for you to get people to start farming black soldier flies? I mean, it must have been a Herculean task for you to, first of all, even touching them alone, people would feel like, how do you start?
I think
I've seen on some on the website people are touching them, but I'm like, before they get used.
We have a website, Children of Revolutionaries 256 on YouTube. So you can check us out. So, but what we check here, when we began this, we came up with a proposal, and my language will surprise you. I told them, I am not government. I am an individual who believes individual people can play a role in their own development. Instead of closing our hands to our chest and saying, we are waiting for government to yambe. If all of you will say with me that tusobola ate twesobola, meaning we can, and we can stand into the foresight of our own change within our community, then I have a proposal for you. You grow this in this amount of time, and then you do that in this amount of time. And I called the RDC, and we worked together with a group of community leaders from LC1 up to, and she called all of them. I said, this is the project I have, and can we do something about it? And they said, we can. They all came and they did whatever they did, and then they took more, and now here we are. We have about 400 people.
And that is only being, working within Kalangala.
That is within Kalangala, and it had better be working within Kalangala more than anywhere else, because the soil that comes from there, Kalangala has loamy sandy soils. So we need to cover the top sandy soils with this that comes out of the biomatter, from the from the bioactivity of black soldier fly larvae. And it really helps them to keep the soil a little bit fertile. It gives them a top layer of soil. There we don't talk about fertilizer, we talk about creating a top layer of soil that can actually help them cultivate and farm their food, because most of their food comes from outside the mainland.
This top layer talking about, more or less, these are droppings of the larva.
These are droppings of the larvae.
But the larva, you dry it and feed it the fish and
we
chicken.
give it to the fish and chicken. as an alternative to the silverfish, which is no longer available as much as it used to be in the lake.
So as a country like Uganda that has almost half of East Africa's arable land that is still okay, can't we at least in the meantime even use that to produce on a massive scale?
This is where now we need well-wishers, we need government to be aware of us in a positive light, to really help us, because we at least have this code that we have cracked household per household. But the problem is there is more need for this kind of project, and we are individuals who are doing some initiative on the ground. Patrick, we cannot go and be able to touch all the 70,000 people on Kalangala, because all they need for householders and investment is 25,000 shillings. But we can only afford 400 people. But the rest want to be involved, but we cannot afford to. So if there is this that they can do, then let them work together with us and we try to create something. And maybe we can demonstrate to others that they can also make their own economic village.
So in doing all this, Asha, who is your quartermaster?
Who's my?
Who is your quartermaster? Who is giving you all these things? This is what you are taking. This is... Who is behind you?
Who's what?
Who is behind you? That's a big project.
The memory of my father and his idea, the late Honorable Chirunda Chivejinja, and also the passion I have to make a change and a difference in where I am, and the passion of people who feel that as individuals, if the leaders are not doing their part, let us at least show them that this is the way we can do it. Really, leadership doesn't mean they have to begin first. A good leader can also follow the people.
One thing I remember for sure is that I was in Kalangala Island about maybe 8 years ago or more. And at one point, it was hard even to find fish in Kalangala. And I'm wondering, I am within the lake.
and there is no fish.
Yeah, you can actually see beef and whatever, and you may not be able to see fish.
Right now, we've begun cage fish farmers groups, you know, on each and every landing site. You know, one landing site in Kalangala has over 200 families. You're talking huge population. These people can give birth, they multiply like nothing. One family has a minimum of 7 children. So you're talking...
I've only been to Bugala.
Pardon? Bugala is the main.
I've only been
that
to
is
the main.
where Kalangala is.
Yes.
So in this particular aspect, as we go on, we hope that as we energize the fishing sector, and we also look at livestock, we would have made a difference.
But Kalangala is an archipelago of almost 80 islands. What
84.
happens? Over 84 islands. What happens on the others?
What happens on the others?
Yeah.
Some are habitable, some are not.
Okay.
You know, I may be about slightly above half of that, you know, habitable, the rest are not.
Okay. Asha Birabwa, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to open, not the lines, but you have our WhatsApp number there. You send your comments or questions you could be having for Asha, and then she'll be able to respond to you. And in case you don't agree with Asha, which is okay, please disagree with respect. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On The Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight is Asha Birabwa Kivejinja, and I ask you to send in your comments or questions so that I can read them for Asha to respond. Some of these interesting views have been coming up, and I can't wait to read them. But one thing is, people wanted to know more about the seasons. There's a person who was like, please repeat for me briefly those seasons. Asha, if you can repeat the seasons you talked about, season 1, 2, and 3,
Okay.
Africa's holistic development.
Season 1 is the hope and dream of redemption. This is a season where people have got human pressing needs, and they are really in despair and agony, and they are looking for a leader to inspire them and take them out of this agony and pain. Season 2 is living the dream and the choice of alternative paths. This is like Uhuru. Now they've arrived in season 2, and there are different groups now happening for the first time. Issues to deal with political leaders, members of parliament, traditionalists, religious leaders, different groups within society now divide themselves up. And they are the ones directly handling all human elements. And this is where politics becomes separated from the human elements, because members of parliament are just a small portion of all these various leaders and social groups that are within the society. And this is where we get a problem. Now, when these people come in and they expect it, remember what inspires the leaders in season 2 is that the individual people are all about a change in their humane circumstances. Whereas the leaders believe if they change leadership, they will be able to inspire this change. Little do they know that they have a conditioning which comes out of the system, which is colonial, that leaves all the human conditions affecting the human beings in their society outside the system. So there will always be one leader coming and poking leadership. It can be a musician, it can be a religious leader coming up and promising that they will look at the human conditions more. And that one will overthrow the status quo, and then they will go ahead and back. In fact, we never go to season 3 of Great Expectations, where we use intellectualism to direct holistic development. So we always stop at season 2 and go back to season 1.
All right, Asha, let me now read the questions and comments. Somebody says, hey, she is really, in quote-unquote, crazy guest. Please, Mr. Kamara, show me her book title and where I can get one. And this one says, dear Kamara, I request that you give that lady more appearance on the spot, on the show. Her discussion can give better direction to this country. And somebody say, NTV, hashtag on NTV on the spot. Thank you for bringing Asha, the Maggot's lady, so famous in Kalangala. And thank you for the presentation, but Asha must know that all offices are closed by wrong people with the personal ideas. This leaves the holistic development behind. And somebody says, I'm Aaron from Kagadi. Thank you for the show, and thank you for bringing our daughter back from the foreign country to this talk show. This one just put a name. Hey, she's really crazy guest. Please show me her book. And somebody says, I request that you give that lady more appearance on the spot show because tulimu kilasi. Good evening. I love the show and I love the intelligence of our guest. Is it healthy and beneficial to directly consume those maggot? Thank you. This is Ochan Wood Pangut. Ochan Wood Pangut. Maybe it's true, the government has a role to play, but even people's mentality should change for them to see the good or bad in government. E.g., even creating Mwoga does require government intervention to acquire government support. Ugandans, please change Mwonge Badru in Kawanda. What can I do to join that project? Rosemary from Munyonyo. Probably you can, let me just read one more and then you can respond to so far what you've heard. Could you give something to Asha Birabwa to expound her stage development concept, i.e. the different seasons we are in class? She has already done that already. What do you make of some of those comments, Asha?
I can only say I'm happy to be here. This is the first time in my book I talk about creative journalism, which is an informative and intellectual aspect of creative intellectualism. It is a pioneer in trying to direct us into new ideas and new concepts that really help us within our community to advance ourselves. And these comments that I've had are humbling, and I'm truly grateful for this opportunity to be here and to be able to share. Because my obligation, being a child of a revolutionary, as you were accusing me,
well, I'm not accusing you.
My
That's
privilege is that of education, and my obligation is actually to share the different knowledge that I have had. And through sharing it, I hope that I am also educating, at least to some degree, the rest of the people so that we can move together. Because when you're talking alone, indeed, you're a mad person. I hope I decrease a bit of this madness by getting a little bit more companionship in this journey.
Sometimes being a genius can be looked at that from that perspective. But where can somebody find these books? Aristoc,
and we have got the Chive Jinja Legacy bookshop, which is in Sese. All these books can be found. There is also the Intellectual Legacy of Chive Jinja, and we also have Understanding Poverty and Its Eradication. They are all in those two bookshops.
I want to thank you so much, Asha, for having given us your time to leave your island in Kalangala to come and share with Ugandans. We are so grateful. What's going to be your concluding remark on the show tonight? My concluding remark is that there are so many challenges we are facing as a world. And when Africa, we are not contributing, we are cheating the rest of the world, and yet we are getting the benefits of them in terms of using their heads. So I hope
that there has never been a time like this for Africa to just position ourselves by who we are naturally. Through agriculture, we can really help the sustenance of human lives and the survival of human lives, the improvement of the quality of a human life, and we can solve our own problems when we capitalize on our own authenticity.
Asha Birabwa, thank you so much. And there you have had her, Uganda's proud daughter, now in Kalangala, helping those farmers, inspiring them. How I wish maybe what is happening in Kalangala can be the spark that can cause holistic development for Uganda and Africa in general. Good night and God bless Uganda.
Thank you.